90 minutes is a solid amount of time to go and watch something, especially if you've paid good money for it. It's equivalent to going to see a film, which is probably 90 minutes, 2 hours. A play is probably about 90 minutes, 2 hours. Anything that you go and sit and pay and watch is a good couple of hours of entertainment. And that seems to be quite sort of the unwritten standard across the entertainment industry, if I could include sport in that.
That was Adam Hurrey, creator and host of Football Clichés. In 2021, upon football's return from the pandemic, a movement to introduce a footballing Super League was put into motion by one Florentino Perez, president of Europe's most prestigious club, Real Madrid. In his rambling, he claimed that football matches are just too long nowadays for young people to sit through. He said, "We have to analyse why young people, 16 to 24-year-olds, 40% of them, aren't interested in football. The percentages he spoke of weren't really backed by any real study." In summary, he blamed other entertainment platforms for what he perceives as football's downfall and believes shortening games would bring the younger fans back. "There are matches that even I can't watch all of them, to be honest," Perez said, a statement that resulted in fierce criticism from fans. Ironically, the interview these quotes are taken from lasted over 90 minutes. I'm your host, Isaac Williams, and as a resident of that 16 to 24-year-old bracket, I've discovered that for a lot of young people, they find it hard to concentrate through an entire football game, causing me to question, should football call full time on the 90-minute match? Since 1877, professional football matches have been 90 minutes long, a tradition of the game that has been unchanged for centuries. This was one of many upstanding traditions challenged by Perez's Super League proposal. However, as the Premier League suffers its biggest injury crisis to date, could there be some merit to Perez's claims despite his unsound methodology?
I think there's a lot of people of Florentino Perez's vintage like to make bold claims about what the youngsters are doing these days. First of all, I don't think Florentino Perez necessarily has his finger on that particular pulse. And the second thing is, I would say, is that you can keep football as it is, and with some minor tweaks to make it more efficient. But I think different viewing habits can be accommodated without messing around with football.
The skill compilation has always been a part of online football culture. Videos compiled of small clips featuring some of the game's greatest intricacies. When I was younger, I spent countless rainy day break times watching skills and goal compilations on YouTube, and with the rise of TikTok, these videos are now more accessible than ever, so it's no wonder why the higher-ups were panicked.
You can package football in all sorts of ways. You see highlights packages, you see Twitter kind of sort of highlights clips. If that is indeed what young people are after, then you can cater for that quite easily without sort of messing around with the spectacle of the live event, because you can't make football too much shorter without sort of destroying the live product for people who actually want to go and see it.
By Gazzaniga, it falls to Bellingham. It's another goal for Jude Bellingham, who started off the attack and finishes it off emphatically.
Stourbridge-born Jude Bellingham has quickly burst through his proverbial glass ceiling since moving to Perez-owned Real Madrid in the summer. At only 20 years old, he's now being looked up to as a leading figure for not only Real Madrid, but England too. Bellingham alone has played over 11,000 minutes of top-flight football, causing Hurrey to almost break character on an episode of his podcast to voice his concerns.
The other thing I worry, not a clamour, but I with the Euros in mind.
You worry, Rob!
I'm concerned about Bellingham because he's doing so well at the moment, and everyone's getting so excited about the fact that we could have the best player in Europe or the world in this tournament. It's absolutely ripe for a pre-tournament injury.
I completely agree, and it won't be a metatarsal. It won't be the traditional kind of heartbreak injury. This is the closest I'm going to get to a sincere footballing topical observation on the Football Clichés podcast. But I'm telling you, Jude Bellingham is going to fall apart. There's something about him that just makes it. he's just ripe for a chronic injury at some point. He's strapped up a lot, which worries me. It's just
Played a lot at a young age.
Yeah, he's getting relied on by basically everybody. He's doing 15 jobs in midfield. I don't like it. I don't like any of it. This is a serious cotton wool situation.
His clamour over Bellingham potentially getting injured really struck a chord with me, and I knew it was something I had to ask him about. Here's a clip from our conversation. Not often you get a lot of serious football chatter on football cliches, but you spoke quite seriously for a brief moment about Jude Bellingham getting injured ahead of the Euros and kind of like the fear in that. Do you think changing the length of games would reduce the risk of those injuries, especially in younger players?
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, that's certainly an argument for it. But I think the prospect of ever shortening games in the sense that you get less football is complete non-starter. It won't happen. That there are too many stakeholders who just can't abide the idea of having less football. So the solution there, and this seems to be more of a growing argument across football, is that there just needs to be fewer games. And Jude Bellingham is an excellent case study for this. I mean, the amount of games that footballers play at the top level has become a huge talking point in the last 5-10 years or so, because it really has hit saturation point, and we're making them play more. They're introducing more and more tournaments and competitions. Now, Bellingham's a great example of someone who, if we're not careful, we could run into the ground. He's playing an insane amount of football, or has played an insane amount of football already. He's now the main man for the biggest club in the world at the age of 20, which is unprecedented for an English player. And English football, I mean, Bellingham is very much the new wave of English football. He's, technically skilled. He runs games to his own tempo. But English football still has this kind of lingering idea that we should play high intensity, high press, high tempo, and overpower the opposition. And I don't think Bellingham is immune from that either. He'll get wrapped up in that for England too. So, and then on top of all of that, you see the fact he's already being sort of strapped up to play for Real Madrid. He's got like a harness on his shoulder just to keep him together at the age of 20. It's very worrying.
Football doesn't look like slowing down anytime soon. The World Cup, Club World Cup and Champions League are all looking at expanding in the coming years. And with the World Cup's revenue reaching an all-time high in 2022, the number of minutes of players will have to play will continue to be a growing concern.
Whilst players are aware of the problem of fatigue and burnout, none of them want to play football for an hour. They've grown up playing for 90 minutes. An hour's not long enough for a game to evolve. So shortening games, in terms of the entire duration is absolutely not going to happen. I don't think anybody's arguing for that. But the new Club World Championship, for example, the new Club World Cup, which is an insane proposition. But at the same time, and I love watching football, and most of the time I can't get enough of it. And I will watch that competition as avidly as anybody else. But even I, at that point, think that's just too much. Like, we don't need it, and I think it's absolutely baffling from a sort of playing minutes perspective. But at the same time, I can totally understand why FIFA have gone ahead and done it. It's a competition that I'm stunned hasn't been invented 50 years ago. Like, the best club teams in the world all coming together like a World Cup. It would arguably be much better than the actual World Cup in terms of football quality, because club sides are just better. So I can see how it's irresistible, but I do worry that something has to give at some point.
So to finish things off, just to wrap everything up, should football be shorter in length?
No, I don't think so. I think there's too much of a cultural obstacle to it. I don't think it would solve the issues that are at stake here, which is sort of footballers' fatigue and entertainment factor and gamesmanship and time wasting. I think there are easier solutions to the problem of burning players out, like just simply reducing the number of games that they play, because football's only going to get more intense. It's got so much faster over the last 10-15 years. It's only going to go in that direction again. So we need to find a better solution that fits culturally with football and doesn't leave sort of fans shortchanged at the same time.
All music heard in this episode is courtesy of the Adobe Archives. Additional archival footage is thanks to TNT Sports coverage of the UEFA Champions League and from episode 6 of Adam's podcast, New Football Cliches. Thank you to Adam Hurrey for taking the time to help me with this project, and thank you all for listening.